European allies step in after Donald Trump betrays Ukraine. I'm Mercedes Stevenson. The West Block starts now. After the American president berated President Zelenskyy in the Oval Office, where do the two countries go from here? We speak with a former President Bush insider in 2 minutes. And a battle of a very different kind as we get closer to a Liberal leadership decision. Polls have the Grits in a tight horse race with the Conservatives. We have a roundtable of Ottawa News Bureau chiefs later in the show. American presidents have historically used the Oval Office to speak directly to the American people and to the world on issues of great importance. Even in difficult times, the tone has always been presidential. All that changed, though, last week. That's when Donald Trump and his vice president instead used it to publicly tear down a wartime president, Volodymyr Zelenskyy. We're going to let part of that exchange play out for you now, and then we'll break it down with a former Bush White House insider.
You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
I can tell you
You're
again,
running low on soldiers.
Listen,
you're running
Mr.
low
President.
on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go, and I wanted this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you what,
that wasn't with me.
Means.
That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person. That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question to Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry, here.
It's going to be a tough deal to make, because the attitudes have to change. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you?
Since then, leaders around the world have made public statements supporting Zelenskyy. Crowds have stood for him, and the president of Ukraine was warmly welcomed by the British PM. David Frum, staff writer at The Atlantic, joins us now. Great to see you, David, if under perhaps some very concerning circumstances. Thank you for making time for us this morning.
Thank you.
We just saw that clip play out of Volodymyr Zelenskyy being essentially double-teamed by President Trump and Vice President Vance in the Oval Office. It really shocked the world. What did you see when you watched that exchange play out?
I saw the confirmation of everyone's worst fears. To date, there has been a line of argument that says maybe the Trump administration, the second Trump administration, won't be so bad. Maybe these are tactics. Maybe these are negotiating moves. When he threatens to blow up the world trading system, when he wants to abandon Ukraine, when he praises Putin as his best friend, when he says he'll abandon Taiwan, maybe these are just maneuvers concealing basically normal presidency. I think what the world saw was Trump's intense personal animus to Zelenskyy and to Ukraine, Trump's unbelievable personal loyalty and bond to Vladimir Putin. He talked about him as if they were like an old married couple. We've been through a lot together. And he praised Putin as trustworthy and dismissed Zelenskyy as untrustworthy. What we saw was they opened the box and showed us this is a Moscow-aligned administration, the vice president even more intensely so than the president, or more flagrantly so, that is ready to abandon Ukraine, who set up a failure mechanism. The so-called minerals deal, version 1 was just a complete predatory extraction of everything that wasn't tied down to Ukraine. And then when they didn't get that, they said, okay, we're not, we abandon you. All of this relates to the whole Western security system. Trump has often talked about abandoning Estonia. He's talked about abandoning Ukraine. And of course, he's waging trade war on America's closest allies, beginning with Canada.
What does it mean for America if you have a president in that office who is, as you say, loyal to Vladimir Putin, who allies himself with someone? The entire Western security system and American history for the past 60 plus years has been about countering.
The American security system is based on protecting America by making sure that America is surrounded by wealthy and powerful allies. You know, Russia, China, the Soviet Union before that, these were isolated regimes, and America faced them with the support of the world's largest economies, Germany and Japan, former wartime enemies, the whole European Union, the peace and security and trust in the North American continent, that China and Russia can't have bad relationships with their neighbors. The United States historically had great relationships with its neighbors. All of those were force multipliers for the United States. And they made the whole world richer because America could trade and freedom and security. Trump rejects all of that, always has. I've been writing about this for a long time. But it's one thing to read it in The Atlantic. It's another thing to watch the president act out on TV. Putin is my friend. I am with him. I want to blow up NATO. I want to blow up the world trading system. I regard my allies as enemies and my enemies as patrons.
When we saw the Kremlin reaction today, they came out and said this largely coincides with Russia's views and take on geopolitics, so that the Kremlin is openly praising this. There's been no attempt by the Trump administration to in any way walk this back. Do you think this was a setup that was deliberate to attack Volodymyr Zelenskyy, or is this just the views that they held spilled into public?
I think both. I think these are the deep views, and it's good to have them revealed. But I think there was a kind of method, especially for the vice president. There had remained inside the Republican Party, and especially among the Republican senators, some continuing commitment to Ukraine. The Republican senators have voted for aid packages to Ukraine. They've tried to escape the discomfort of the president being so Moscow aligned. What Vance was trying to do is create a confrontation that said it's either Trump or Zelenskyy. You cannot be aligned with both.
We saw Senator Lindsey Graham come out clearly aligning behind President Trump. I know you talk to lots of Republicans. What are you hearing from inside those senior Republican levels about what happened? Do they back Donald Trump? Are they concerned about what's happening? Is anybody going to try to balance this out?
It's hard to tell. I think at this point it's a little bit over. The Republicans, especially in the Senate, have spent a long time trying to argue it's not as bad as it sounds. Watch what they do, not what they say. Don't listen to the president's fitful moves. When he declares his love for Putin, that's just, you know, a twitch. Deep down, the policy is better than the explanations. I think that's all gone quiet. Trump, because the whole thing was such a disaster for America's image in the world, Trump has mobilized Republicans in his cabinet, in Congress, to tweet their loyalty, to say on the Elon Musk platform, the president was strong, the president backed him. He got his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, to say this is a sign of American strength. This betrayal of an embattled democracy, this betrayal of European allies, this declaration that Putin and I have been through a lot together, this was an act of American strength. You saw Marco Rubio's face in the Oval Office. He obviously doesn't believe it, but he was forced to say it. They'll all be forced to say it.
Yeah, his body language and his face, he looked extremely uncomfortable. The comments about Zelenskyy not wearing a suit from somebody who has Elon Musk not wearing a suit in the office all the time, just sort of this bizarre playing out of events which seem to be, as you say, continuing in public. They're not backing down from this. On Tuesday, big day. It's a joint session of Congress. The president will be on Capitol Hill for that. It's also the day that the tariffs are scheduled to kick in for Canada. What are you expecting this week to look like?
The point of the tariff, that Canada and the United States have been bound together in bilateral trade agreements since the 1950s. The defense agreement dates back to the 50s, Auto Pact to the 60s, U.S.-Canada free trade to the 80s, NAFTA to the 90s, and then Trump himself put his own signature on a revision of NAFTA. What Trump has just declared with these tariffs, which are in blatant violation of all those treaties, is my signature and America's signature is not worth anything. And now I have some new agreements I'd like you to sign. Well, when you've told the world that your signature is worthless, that your word means nothing, that you reserve the right to renege on any agreement you make, including the ones you signed yourself personally, why would anyone do any business with you at all? You cannot trust these people. Does NATO still exist? If Trump will do this to Ukraine, if he will abandon Canada and Mexico, break his word, what is America's word worth on the Article 5 commitment in NATO to protect its allies. What Trump has done is pulled out the whole system rests on trust in America, and that in turn rests on trust in the president. And what he's shown the world is the president cannot be trusted. The president has these sinister, shadowy loyalties to Putin and Moscow. He is hostile to allies. He doesn't believe in trade. He doesn't believe in markets. He is a predator. And we are all sort of standing in the ruins of the world we've lived in since the end of the Second World War.
What advice would you give to the incoming Canadian Prime Minister? We'll find out who that is next weekend when the Liberals choose their new leader. We expect an election shortly after that. But what do you think you do to operate in this environment?
You have to gain leverage, and that means you need to think about all kinds of unimaginable things. There was word that Peter Navarro, who's, admittedly kind of a crazy person, but an important Trump advisor, was talking about kicking Canada out of the Five Eyes intelligence sharing agreement. The most important Canada-U.S. security agreement is NORAD, the North American Air Defense, where Canada makes its airspace available to the United States. That when they shot down, a Canadian plane, but with American information, shot down the Chinese spy balloon, that was because that was a NORAD operation. Well, that's a treaty. And when you have a treaty with a faithless partner, every treaty has to be up for grabs. You have to think about everything. Canada has less leverage than the United States, obviously, but it doesn't have zero. And of course, this is all existential for Canada. Canada has to think very creatively, and a lot of things that are too horrible even to speak about have to be pulled out of the thinking box and put into the discussion room.
Yeah, Navarro also speculating openly about simply redrawing the border with Canada. Unprecedented times, and we appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for joining us, David.
Thank you.